coming to the town hall. I'm delighted to see everybody here. We've talked a lot about it throughout this conference. I am very excited about this. I think we've had lots and lots of conversation over the last day and a half about the challenges that we face with how to address the needs of our young African American youth, particularly with our African American males. And so if anybody watched Scandal last night, we won't tell you how it all ends if you're taping it, but it was even addressed on that show quite well. So we wanted to invite a group of folks who have lots of knowledge and experience in addressing this kind of issue. And the point here is that folks walk away from this session with some concrete ideas, with some innovative ideas, things that you can do, things that you can take back to your campuses. How do we continue this work? How do we build new collaborations? How do we do this work in our communities? And how do you do this work at your institution? So I will let the panel introduce themselves. And what I've done is ask each of them to give about a minute of who you are. About a minute, right?
I can give you 30 seconds.
I know.
My name is Royce Morris. I'm a partner at the law firm of Goldberg Katzman in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I practice primarily criminal defense work, and I represent a lot of young African American males.
Good afternoon. I'm Homer Floyd, former executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and I was in that capacity for 41 years. So all of the college campuses that are represented here, I have been on at one point in my career. It's good to see that there is an increased number of African Americans in higher education, because in 1970 when I started, there were few and far between. So we've got to keep up the momentum and keep it going. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Labor and Industry Committee for the NAACP, both at the state level as well as here in Harrisburg.
Wow. My name is Eric Pappenfuss. I'm the mayor of Harrisburg. It's an honor to be on this distinguished panel with such wonderful guests. Two facts about my biography which you should know are that first and foremost, I started from a vantage point of the career in teaching. I was planning to go into higher education, and my wife taught at the college level for a number of years. We met in graduate school. I ended up coming to Harrisburg and teaching in the Central Dauphin School District, so I have a public school background. And eventually, part two of the biography, I went into business in Harrisburg, so I have experience firsthand as an employer. And we hire at the bookstore, somewhere in the range of 60 or 70 different Harrisburg residents at any one time. So I have a background in education and in job creation, and that has sort of set the stage for now being elected to office.
My name is John Sigilski. I'm known as Ski. I'm the president of Harrisburg Area Community College, known as HACK. Yes, it's okay to say. I've been here 3 years, and we are the largest and the oldest community college in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have a few campuses. I'd like to ask a little trivial pursuit question. Sonia, how many campuses does HACK have? 5 campuses, that's right. You will get this. You will get this blanket. To take all of the HACK basketball games. But you've been a big fan of ours. But so Harrisburg area, 5 campuses: Gettysburg, Harrisburg, Lebanon, Lancaster, and York. Plus online, 7,000 students online as well. So we have 21,000 students total.
Hi, my name is Juanita Edgerton Grant, and I'm the founder and CEO of CRAM Incorporated, which stands for Christian Recovery Aftercare Ministry Incorporated. And I have the unfortunate task to work with the ex-offenders who are the fathers of many of the young African-American males who are unfortunately coming through the judicial system. And one of the main programs that we have at CRAM is called Family Reunification, because what we're trying to do is help the fathers that are coming out of prison as they transit back into the community, to get employment, to get skilled, to get back with their families, to try to get rid of the old mentoring, like do as I say but not as I do, because kids don't go for that no more. They do what they want. And then they use their parents as models, which that's who they're supposed to model themselves after, but always that's not the best model. So what I'm doing right now at CRAM is trying to help predominantly the male offenders, that's who I mostly work with, is to get back into the family and try to help redirect their young sons and daughters that they have so they don't follow the path that they follow.
Thank you all very much. Distinguished panelists. So we have three basic questions. There's a few sort of built in. The panelists have seen those questions, so they know what we want them to respond to. The way that we want this to happen is to have this be fairly interactive, so we want to make sure that we leave time for panelists to respond, for you all to give feedback. It may become interactive enough that we don't get to questions 2 and 3. I think we've all agreed we'll just let this flow, right? So whatever this turns out to look like, I think is where you all want it to go. So we're going to start with the first question, however, which is just from your vantage point, given your roles in the community, what would you all say are the most significant challenges or issues facing our African American youth across the country in 2018?
I can start with that. I just met with the Black Student Union this morning and just reviewed my comments with them to make sure I was on the right page. So here are some of the issues that I see and that we see at the community college. But before I begin, how many of you have attended a community college? Great, many of you. How many at HAC? Okay, good. Front row, of course. Yes, most intelligent people sit in the front row, don't they? How many of you know know about those in your family or friends that have gone to a community college in Pennsylvania, since you're from all over? How many of you interacted with students from community colleges? Most of you, great, and the smartest students, of course. How many of you know where at least one community college is located? Okay, good. So we're on the same page, we're part of the family. My response to this is, there are several quick answers for you. One is a lack of hope due to the lack of education. When I interact with several students, it doesn't matter what color they are, the whole idea of having someone in their family who may be able to model some sense of the importance of education is critical. The next is, and this is national as well as not just in the area, the racial profiling and brutality that some of the law enforcement officials have in some ways engaged our students with. And we have talked about that a lot on our campus. Some of the racism that does still exist. Single parent, fatherless homes is an important piece. The high school dropout rate, unemployment, and the whole idea of the student body. We have a large African American student body at HAC, at our 5 campuses. But when we look at the data and we look to see completion rates, no longer in 2 years, but 4 years or 6 years, we're seeing that the completion rate among our African American students is not tracking with other students. And so what we began in September were 2 focus groups and then 2 support groups working just with our African American students to ensure we have wraparound services, similar to probably a lot of what you have at your institutions, but wraparound services to try and provide those students with the opportunities and availability to be successful. So those would be some of my comments that I would provide you with.
Well, I have the microphone, so let me see. I would say probably the 2 biggest issues, if we were looking at Harrisburg specifically, are first and foremost the sort of cataclysmic performance of the Harrisburg School District, which currently is in recovery, but which sees all but 2 of its schools receiving failing grades and reports, and deeply failing grades that would be equivalent to being in the 30s or the 40s or the 50s. And even the high points of the school district, in the past, we've seen some selective high points, whether it was SciTech or the Math Science Academy. You've seen both of their scores sort of declining even amidst recovery, to the point where you had a school like the Math Science Academy, which was one of the best in the region, most recently be graded in the low 70s. You've seen great teacher turnover in the district. You've seen certainly a variety of things which have been a long time in the making. And that's been despite a variety of recovery efforts. You had a mayoral takeover for 10 years. You then have had a state-sponsored recovery plan for the last several years. Now we have a new administration which is coming in and which is trying to bring, essentially trying to correct an inequitable funding formula for our public school system, which is going to make a huge impact on Harrisburg. The proposal in the Wolf budget is millions more for education, a tremendous reduction in property taxes for Harrisburg residents, and a more balanced playing field for how we're supporting our schools. All that is important, but the result is we have had an entire generation plus of schools which have failed our children. And now we are dealing with the consequences of that, and any recovery is going to take time and is going to have to start with strong investments, I think, in our youngest children, in pre-K, and we're going to have to follow through up on that all the way up into higher education. But we can't discount, in Harrisburg at least, the current trauma that we have in our public school system. The other major issue, I would say, for Harrisburg is essentially a lack of opportunity. I agree that there's a lack of hope which has grown out of that, but essentially there's a lack of opportunity for all sorts of things, whether it be employment in the form of summer jobs or real opportunities, employment opportunities, lack of opportunity in terms of mentoring and programming and other resources. And I don't want this to turn into just a litany of what's wrong, because I think there's a lot of things that we can do to correct those things. But if you're asking, the two largest issues I see are a fundamental problem with our K through 12 educational system in the city, and a lack of opportunity, both economic and otherwise.
Well, let me first comment on the issue of the performance of African American students. I look at statewide, and there's no question that there's a lot of improvement we need to make. There are, though, some African American students from families who are well qualified, well equipped, and community support, as well as good teachers, and are doing very, very well. Some of these kids are knocking the top off SATs and are doing well. That's not the majority, but there are African American students doing very well. And I would like to make that comment before I go to the negative. A major problem we have, it's not only African American male youth, but a major problem we have is the imaging. The kind of projection of African Americans at all levels is absolutely incredible. And we are now marketing. We are marketed in such a ways. We have these stupid programs on television that we're coming up with. They have the hip hops, the dress, the music, disrespecting. All of these are issues that we have to recognize that what we've seen determines what we see. What we've seen determines what we see. If you see African Americans acting a fool all the time on television, and you're white, and and that's the only exposure you have, then what do they think of us? The other dimension to that is you can't get the kind of support we need in order to correct some of the problems that are now being identified. With the budget cuts under the previous administration, the school districts that were the poorest got hit the hardest. As a result, the performance went down because they had to lay off teachers, they had to lay off counselors, they had to lay off a number of other areas in order to try to make the budget come out right. So these are concerns that we have that I think you have to recognize, though, there's a job to be done in trying to turn this around. And it's a perception gap also as it relates to all of us. Our experiences may be different from the experiences from others, people in society. And so we look at problems just like a Trayvon Martin can be walking through a neighborhood. Most of us would have at least thought that, well, he's just going home or whatever. But somebody thought that he's up to no good. And that's all a perception of, and that's the kind of thing that I think we've got to work on as we deal with some of the problems.
Okay, I'm going to go all positive. I'm not going to hit any of the negatives. I believe that, and this comes from Wes Moore, I'm going to give him his attribution. He wrote a book called The Two Wes Moores, and it was about two young men who grew up in almost the same neighborhood, same area in Baltimore. One became a Rhodes Scholar and a very successful individual. The other one wound up spending life in prison. And he said that we are a product, not a product of our environment, we're a product of our expectations. And so we need to create expectations for our young people that go beyond what they see. We need to create those expectations. We need to get involved in creating those expectations. If they never see a lawyer, the benefit that I have as a criminal defense lawyer is that I spend a lot of time in jail. But I get to get out. And I sit across from a lot of young men. And you know what? When I look in that young man's eyes, I see myself. And for too many of us, we no longer see ourselves when we look at a Trayvon Martin, or when we look at a brother who's arrested and charged with a crime. We don't see ourselves anymore. We begin to see those African American males, those black boys. We begin to see ourselves as different than them. We need to create that expectation for them by being there. I'm involved in a group of African American men. I told Carl I was going to go there. But we've gotten together and we coalesced. We have former drug dealers. We have, lawyers, doctors, pastors. We have a collection of people who come from all African American males who come from all demographics. And we've decided, look, we're going to put aside all our differences and we're going to come together and we're going to try to reach the young people. But looking around this room, who's under 21 in here? Nobody. Couple claiming it. But we need to engage them in the conversation. And if we can't sit across from them and talk to them, we can't engage them in the conversation. Okay? How many of you like rap music? Okay, well, we got quite a few. Okay. If you don't, you need to listen to it so that you can relate to some of these young people. Fetty Wap and OT Genesis and Young Dolph, these rappers that they know who talk about drugs and the drug culture, and they want to trap queen as their girl, and they want to sell the cocoa, that kind of stuff. You need to know about that. You need to be able to relate to that so that when you're talking to them, you're not talking a different language. If you're talking Swahili and they're talking German, then you're not going to be able to relate to them. So you need to take yourself out of your box, take off your little nice suit, and you need to get down and get a little gritty. Because in order to reach them, they need to hear you talk their language. Now, like I said, I sit across from a lot of folks who are as gritty as you can get. And I couldn't communicate with them if I didn't get down and try to speak the language that they speak. I wouldn't be able to try the case. I wouldn't be able to sit next to them in a courtroom and put myself or try to put the jury in that person's space. Because that's the only way my client's getting off, and I want him to get off. If I can make the jury relate to him, and I can't make the jury relate to him if I can't relate to him. So that's what I learned. But I also learned it's an effective tool to reach young people. to create the expectation. If they see you like them, and they see where you are and what you've attained, they say, wait a minute. He ain't no better than me. He's not special. Nothing different about him than me. And then they say, hey, I can do what he can do. And that's what we want them to say. At the end of the day, we want them to say, I can be a college professor. I can be a doctor. I can be a lawyer. Because I've seen it modeled for me in a real way.
I only have one comment because there's been so much said. In my experience with dealing with the population of youth or the young African American males is they're role models. To me, my mom and my dad are the people who I'm going to live with the most of my life, and that's where I'm going to spend most of my days. And therefore, the parents are not being role models, and you know what kids are doing, they're going out in the street. Because even if they have some hope or if they want to live their life in a respectable way, if they're in a home with a drug addict parent or you know, a parent that's spending a lot of times with criminal activities or just doing a lot of things that are not attractive or positive to the child, what other model do they have? They are raised. It's just, our nature tells us it's our mom and our dad that we look up to. So I think that you can't really do a whole lot with youth unless you do something with the parents. You got to do something with the parents. I particularly don't, I don't have children, I come from a big family, but I particularly don't have a lot of tolerance with the youth, but I try to work and help them. I'm being honest. I don't do kids, that's the bottom line. But I do things to try to help them, and so I help the parents. In my church, they know I don't do the youth. I'll give them my money, I'll support the programs, but don't ask me to sit in a room with them. I don't have the tolerance, but I want to see them do the right thing. I want to see them have opportunities, and I want to see them have hope. But unfortunately, we have to deal with some of these parents, and these parents are a piece of work.
Thank you. So in this conversation, obviously, over the last several months, we've seen a number of stories. We've seen the Michael Browns, right? We've seen a number of stories of young black men who have been in the presence of or had interactions with law enforcement. And so part of what we want to hear from you all in terms of your perspective is just, are there particular strategies, particular mechanisms, things that you all know about in the community that communities can actually put into place so that we decrease some of those interactions in the first place?
I believe the whole mentoring thing is important because you have positive people in the community. If they can't get it from home, they have to get it from the street, but they don't have to get it from the street. They may get it outside of the home. I think mentoring programs are really important because that gives the youth an opportunity to see whether it's coming from the parent or the uncle, but there's a person out here that can show you. You know, my thing with people, I try to tell them, I am where I am only through the grace of God. Not because I lived a good life. And it's not because my mom lived a bad life, it's I made some bad choices. So, you know, with my bad choices, you know, I was able to do a flip around, you know, before I died out there in the street. And through the grace of God, I am where I am today. But I'm trying to tell them, you may not get that opportunity that I got. You may end up dead, you know, or in jail for the rest of your life. So, you know, what I try to do with the parents that I work with, you can't change if you were a drug addict. You can't change if you went to jail. But you can live a better life before your children to try to make them understand is, yes, I made some bad decisions. Yes, I made you suffer. But now I'm here. I'm doing better. Let me work with you now. But the parents need help to do that because most of them don't know how to do that. So the whole mentoring thing of mentoring the youth and mentoring the parent, you know, and my thing is mentoring the whole family, you know, doing a holistic thing, trying to get them to come back together because a lot of times now, the relationships have been so ruined, you know, with the kid and the parent that, especially boys, they're hard. They don't want their dads trying to tell them what to do after he done lived a life of crime or a life of drugs. So you need somebody there, and I'm not talking about no paid psychiatrist. I'm talking about somebody either from a faith-based perspective or somebody that really has the heart, you know, to be out there in the community and say, okay, I'm going to help this son and his father try to get back into a decent relationship.
jump in, and I want to talk specifically about the divide between the police and the public in Harrisburg, but I wanted to comment briefly on the concept of expectations that Royce brought up and say, I agree. I think I am troubled at times that we don't have high enough expectations, and I think it all starts with a commitment and a belief and a fundamental belief that everyone has the ability to achieve excellence, and that has to be reinforced by all community leaders in everything that we do. The reality is, although everyone can achieve excellence, if we don't have a high enough expectation of our school district, then we aren't giving our children the tools that they need to be able to be successful. And you end up with situations whereby people who have been socially promoted year after year are graduating thinking that they have the skills to be successful in this economy, and in fact, they don't. And there is a sense of betrayal which sort of compounds everything that makes it harder what we're doing. We also have to have, I think, higher expectations, as Homer referenced, for our media and our culture, our imaging culture. I'll give you an example from Harrisburg. We had two treasurers recently, one of whom was white and was indicted for theft. And the media story for that was fall from grace of golden boy who how could this possibly have happened? Then we had an African American treasurer who had applied for the position and had some financial issues, and the media was immediately quick to say, completely unqualified, never should have ever been elevated to the position. So you had two completely different narratives of public officials based on their race. And I would argue that happens all the time. It happens all the time in our reporting on Harrisburg and the perspective on Harrisburg. And we've got to demand that our media does better, especially in a day and age which essentially fosters this culture of anonymous commentary. And with anonymous commentary, the racial undertones and the coarseness and just the coarsening of the discourse that goes with that is so divisive and so destructive to the elevation of expectations that we need to have. So, yeah. With regard to what we're trying to do in Harrisburg, we have a majority African American city, and we have a police force that is overwhelmingly white. We have a police chief who understands that now and who wants to change that and who has the support of the community and believes in things such as diversity training and active recruitment. But we have to undertake a seismic shift to be able to recruit new African American officers for Harrisburg. And one of the things that our chief believes in, that we've been trying to push, is that we have to bring our police into our schools, not as the other that is there to lock our kids up, but as role models who are there to mentor and to be a part of their lives, to keep kids in school, especially the kids that are in danger of dropping out or falling out of school. We don't have that, unfortunately, in Harrisburg. We don't have that connection between our police officers and the school district. We've tried to implement a school resource officer program, but again, one with an emphasis on mentoring and one that would literally seek to sort of cut off the school to prison pipeline that we see is in existence all too often. So that's a specific example of a program that we have tried to put forth. I will say one thing that is very interesting about today's culture is, and speaking to a lot of students, they don't distinguish between a Harrisburg police officer and a police officer more generally. When there's talk of what's happening in New York or Ferguson, there's a perception, I think, of the police, which is national and cultural in nature, and which can't even be counteracted by specific changes that we make on the ground in Harrisburg. We're still living that larger legacy, and that is something that we're all going to have to work for. And another thing that we're trying to do to help balance that out is to move to a more regional notion of policing. And there's a study in the way here which is looking to combine to a county-wide system, which I think would go a long way to making sure that you're not just correcting the problem in individual districts, but in the region as a whole. So.
Yeah, I want to comment in regard to the unconscious bias that occurs in the interaction in terms of race relations. And the police has always been used as a way of enforcing whatever the rules are as it relates to a community. And very often those decisions that are made has certain prejudicial attitudes and actually consequences for African Americans. The diversity training needs to go a little bit deeper into the whole concept of unconscious bias. We can't really get at the problem until we recognize what the problem is. And the police throughout our history has always enforced the laws against us on behalf of someone else in most instances. And I think the Ferguson report, as it relates to African Americans, is a typical example of how the city was using the tickets against minorities as a way of funding their city budget, and those kinds of things that we have to recognize. When I was with the Human Relations Commission, we developed a pamphlet of what to do when you are stopped by the police. And I think all of our kids need something like that in the schools as part of their academic program, so that they will understand that whatever the issue is, they're not going to solve it there on the street. You best need to be polite, answer the questions, deliver the license, that's what they're asking for. And if it's an improper stop, you file your complaint later, but you don't try to solve it by agitating the police, because they got the gun, they got the billy club, and in addition to that, they got the taser now. And that's a lot of weaponry for you to be going up against. So you gotta at least be able to do rational thinking. And that's what we need to make our kids understand that there are things that you can do, but you just can't do it there on the street. And but it needs to also be a part of our curriculum, in my judgment, of some of these, which is just basic things that most of us know as adults, but sometimes they don't click with us at 16 years old.
I don't read that much, but Charles Ogletree's book, Presumption of Guilt, about the Henry Gates matter, I recommend that to everyone. Brothers, we have a vested interest in making sure that the police treat our folks right. Because if I was racially profiled 3 times last year. Legitimate racial profiling, I know it well. I'm a criminal defense attorney. On all 3 occasions, I should not have been pulled over. On all 3 occasions, they didn't ask for my license and registration. They asked where I was going and what I was doing. So I knew what it was. The first time I gave my attorney card, that was in Maryland, filed a complaint against that officer. The second 2 times, one time I had about an hour to kill, so I decided to play around a little bit, and then I got a little nervous and I didn't take it as far as I wanted to take it. But the reality is, you know, outside of this suit, okay? So, my life is endangered if police aren't sensitized to what they're doing and the profiling that they engage in. So I have a vested interest in making sure that police are sensitive to what they're doing. Now, it's a hard thing for us to grapple with, but the fact of the matter is, police need to realize you need to let some things go. Because if in your mind you think, that black boy is up to no good, if that's the first thing that pops into your mind, then that's the wrong thing to pop into your mind. If you look at that situation and you see that situation in a colorblind way, which I say it's hard to do, then maybe you react. But if the person's driving the speed limit, if they're in the right part of town, and there's no legitimate reason for you to pull them over, other than because you suspect that they might be up to no good, then as a police officer, you shouldn't be doing that stop. You shouldn't be having that interaction. But it's so hard out there when they have quotas and criterias, and they want to make arrests. And I spoke to a chief of police, and I won't name him today, but he disciplined an officer who was making small drug arrests. He was making his career off of small drug arrests on predominantly African-American males. And he was patting himself on the back because he was arresting all these African-American males for these small drug arrests. Now that chief did what most chiefs of police should do and say, you're not going to get ahead. If every time you come in here, you're bringing me some drug arrest on some African-American young man, most of them small, most of them petty, you're not going to get ahead. And after that conversation with that officer, I guarantee his behavior is going to change. So those things are important. We need policing that's smart. We need policing that's not focused on, how many arrests you make and, the type of arrests you make. We need policing that's looking at protecting our communities. And I submit to you that not all those arrests have anything to do with protecting our communities. Not all those arrests have anything to do with keeping drugs off the street or keeping the community safe. A lot of them have to do with hunches, suspicions, things that are not based in the law. And the other thing is, police officers get training just like I do. And if you are trained in drug interdiction, and you're trained to look for certain things, and you're trained in a way that leads you to have to pull over predominantly African American and Hispanic motorists driving SUVs or fancy cars, then I question that training that tells you that that's the profile you look for in drug interdiction. So, and they'll cover it up and they'll say that, there are these other indicators that they look for. But I question some of the training that our law enforcement officials receive on how to do drug interdiction on our highways. So it's a big problem, but it affects brothers in here. Pay attention, because if you read that book, Ogletree's book, Henry Gates, professor at Harvard. Okay, and if you read that book, young, talented, bright African-American men who found their way to Harvard. You know how hard it is to get out of school. They found their way to Harvard, and they're walking on the Harvard yard, and they're getting harassed by the Harvard Police Department and the New Haven, or where's Harvard?
Harvard's in Cambridge.
Cambridge. In that community, they're getting harassed. So that's what I'm talking about. It affects all of us. And for those of you in higher education, when that African-American boy comes on campus, if you're not telling him what his environment is like and where he can go and how he should conduct himself and how he should carry himself, then you're doing him a disservice.
How do you follow that? If I can, very quickly, just answer the question that you had asked. One of the things that we are finding great success with our men of color is going into Head Start. If we're going to look at some solutions long term, we're involved in Head Start. We're involved in the Boys and Girls Club. Yvonne Hollins here in the Harrisburg area does a great job with our Boys and Girls Club. We have students who are leaving our campus and going into both Head Start and the Boys and Girls Club to do work with the students. We also are into the elementary schools. Floyd Stokes, for those of you that are familiar with Floyd in the Harrisburg area, he brought in 500 men who read to 2 or 3 of the elementary schools in the Harrisburg area this past week. And that is now, I don't know if it's the 12th or 13th year that he's been doing it, but there's been some success there as well. One of the things that we are doing is we're moving into many of our high schools, including Harrisburg, York, McCaskey, William Penn, and working with the juniors and seniors, our high school students, men of color. We in York have Latino and African American men, where we are spending more time in juniors and seniors to make sure that they are prepared for success at our college so they can then transfer on to your college. The other piece that we are doing as well is talking to many of them, starting in the 6th grade, talking to students and especially their parents. Because Harvard just did a study recently that said mothers are very important in how a child chooses a career. And second of all, 6th grade is where students are already starting to talk about what their career may be. And so it's important for us to start working with those 6th graders. And we talk about STEM education. I know some of this is lofty, it's not as practical as we would like it to be, but I think what's important is that we are very much engaged in this conversation in various aspects of the community. And it may not impact it today, but we have great hope in how it's going to impact it tomorrow. The other piece that came up a lot has to do with law enforcement. Our colleges, as well as several other community colleges and I'm sure universities, we have a public safety center where we are training the next generation of law enforcement officials. And I will tell you, over the last year, the curriculum has changed. I'm not so certain about the drug aspect, but about the racial profiling and various conversations around that. I had been in a couple of the classrooms to listen to the conversation and see how different it is. So I know that changes are happening, changes are being made. They may be slower and they may be more long-term, but I know that there is encouragement that we are seeing and hearing within our sphere, within the community college world.
So to continue that vein, our last question, then we'll open it up to the floor. So part of what you started to talk about, Steve, was how institutions of higher ed can collaborate, come together, develop some new innovations around addressing these kinds of issues. So I think there's a pipeline issue to address. And then we have a whole community of folks who are already in the system and are coming out into reentry. So how can these folks around this room participate in efforts to address some of the needs in either sector, if you will? So are there innovative kinds of relationships and collaborations we ought to be thinking about for the folks in this room when we go back to our institutions?
And are most of you all four-year institutions? Yes. Okay, good. So a couple thoughts that I had have to do with, can we together, the community college and the four-year schools, have recruiters that go into correctional facilities? And I know you'll hear from the guest speaker tonight, the Secretary of Corrections, who's doing a fabulous job, very innovative, and wants to really make some serious changes in our correctional institutions with education. Is there a way that we can come together as a 2-year and 4-year institution to engage some of the individuals in our correctional institutions? Is there a way that we can focus efforts together, maybe scholarship efforts from high school to the community college to the four-year school, that really provides kind of a plan with mentoring all along the way that will allow especially our men of color to be able to experience some of the positive of what a higher education means? Is there a way that we can work together to retain men of color within the educational situation, starting at high school, so high school, community college, four-year? Is there a way we can work together on that? Or our students, you know, we're reaching out to some of the HBCUs to see if they will have their graduate students of education come to do some student teaching at the college, because we need to get more individuals of color to teach within our organization. We have many individuals of color who are employed by the college, but not all in the classroom. And we have to do a much better job of that, because we have to make sure that our students see people like themselves. In a survey that we did recently, there were 3 aspects that came up from our students of color in a focus group we did. One was that they felt good on the campus. They felt affirmed, they felt safe, they felt welcome. There was another group that felt that there was some discrimination that happened, and most of the discrimination was out of ignorance. That many, let's say, of white faculty or white administrators weren't really comfortable or didn't really know how to interact with the individual, with the students. And so there really was some ignorance. And the other point we heard from students is that they adapted themselves to what they felt the culture of the college was. And the only way they were going to succeed is if they adapted their behavior to what was perceived as our behavior. And so those are issues that we are dealing with now in small groups with the individuals who participated in these focus groups to ensure that is addressed, talked about and addressed. So we're having more conversation. The last couple things before I turn it over is, together, can we work with our local employers? It's so important to engage our employers and help them see from, say, the senior year in high school or the community college or the 4-year about the advantage. How do we deal with our ex-offenders? A position that Charles and I know are working with Martin Luther King Leadership Institute. We're going to be drawing in some employers to find out, would they be willing to engage those who are ex-offenders or those who are leaving prison? How can they become engaged again, get some education, a certificate, maybe a diploma, and then get engaged in the workforce? We know that's difficult. So what can we do with that? How can we work with the Department of Corrections to provide tutorial services or something? Again, as I said earlier, working with the churches is very important. Getting a certificate, providing a certificate for some of our ex-offenders so they can begin their journey, stackable credentials. So somebody comes out, we get them a certified nurse's assistant certificate. Can they move into an LPN position? Can they move into an RN position? You know, what possibilities are there? And how can we work with a lot of the nonprofit organizations that really do want to do good work? So how can we bring all these resources together? There truly are a lot of resources and individuals who want to do well. We just somehow seem to have to bring us together to make it happen.
A couple of things that I would suggest. We are working with the STEM program as it relates to engineering. This past summer in the Penn State as well as Harrisburg Community College has been very much supportive of this effort, and the National Society of Black Engineers has chosen Harrisburg School as one of the sites that they want to work on for next year. There are 15 sites around the country. Also, it is important for you as a group to become more politically involved. We sometimes get away from the fact that, you're not born until a politician or his designee signs something to say you're born, and you don't die until a politician or his designee sign off on it. So, and in between, there's a whole lot of living that you've got to do. And many of the things that we're talking about, such as education funding, is something that you need to support, because a lot of the money that has been proposed for in the governor's budget goes to higher ed, and that directly affects you. In addition to that, there's legislation that you should be supporting, in my judgment. Carl, House Bill 85, which deals with minority contracting, a very important bill if we can get it through, because the state regularly gives out contracts. And when we did the analysis of contracts available to minority businesses, there was very, very few, very few. Your universities are doing contracts regularly. You need to know what's happening with that and whether or not you can influence how those contracts are being let. The other thing that I think you should be aware of that we're pushing, and if I can find it here, it has to do with the whole business of employers and their using criminal records as a discriminatory practice. We're supporting legislation that would provide, make it an unfair employment practice if the employers use certain kinds of decisions as it relates to applicants who have been incarcerated and have done their time and now out. We're saying that the decisions that you should make should be based on the circumstance of the application. That is, what's the nature of the job versus the nature of the offense, and how will that occur? Well, certainly you wouldn't want somebody that robbed a bank. You'll come back and set them up in a teller's job or something, you know. But there are jobs out there that in no way relates to the offense that occurred. We're also saying that the length of time. When did this occur? Was it 18 years old, or was it something recent? Take that into consideration. We're also asking them to look at what has the individual done to rehabilitate him or herself. Have they done any additional training in order to try to make themselves qualified? These are some of the things that the legislation would do. And Senator Greenleaf and Senator Kepler have introduced that bill, so I wanted to mention that to you as well. But you need to get politically active.
Mayor?
I think the advice to get politically active is really good, and I agree with it. I think it's especially important because I think that goes against standard conventional wisdom for higher education, which is to be apolitical, to be anything but controversial in that sense. And I don't think we're talking about political in the terms of partisan. We're talking political in terms of engaging with the governing polis to recognize that those decisions matter and are fundamentally intrinsic to the educational mission. So I think that's a mind shift. The way I would say it, and this is similar, is if there's one thing which higher education institutions have to do, it is to recognize that they are part of the communities in which they are situated, the larger, greater communities. Bridging the town-gown divide is absolutely essential, and it's too often not the case. Just as politics and being political is a means of appealing to the very age group that you are educating, so too is engaging with the community in meaningful ways. And I think every curriculum that is developed in higher education has to have a community service component as a part of that. And I can see that for any career track, including liberal arts. And we don't do that enough, and I think you will find that the politicians on the other side of that would be eager to embrace that and would want that to be a part. But it's too easy for your students to essentially live a cloistered existence that does not impact the community, and it's too easy for, on the administrative level, to want to avoid that type of interaction, to try and intrinsically avoid something being political or controversial, but it is what needs to happen, and we should talk about it.
And I was just going to say the higher education aspect of it, I'm not knowledgeable on this, but this is what I would suggest. Getting these young people on campus as soon as possible. Getting them exposed to college as soon as possible. Steve Harvey runs a boot camp for children from single family homes. He brings the kids and their mothers to his branch. And he does this sort of boot camp mentoring program with African American males as the primary mentors for these boys. And he's had some success with that program. You got a big institution. You got a community with a bunch of problems. And African American males with a bunch of problems. So couldn't you invite some of those problem area people to your campus, expose them to something different? Allow them to see that there's this other world out there that they can aspire to. Get some of those dollars that you have stored up from your endowments and endow them with an opportunity to see something different. So that's just a suggestion. I don't know whether it could work. I'm not in this area. I'm not in this field. But that's a suggestion. Because until you're exposed to it, and I'm just going to say this. Both my parents did not graduate high school the traditional way. My mom got her GED. My father went to the military, and he never really got his piece of paper, but we believe he graduated. But the fact of the matter is, they had an expectation that I would be successful, and they spoke that to me. Neither one of them had anything above a high school education in terms of where they got, and employment-wise, they never worked in any kind of professional employment. However, they created an expectation. I was exposed to that expectation through what they said to me. It wasn't until I saw it that it became real to me. When my sister went to college, then it became real to me. When she went to Howard University, and I drove up there with her as a 9, 10-year-old, and I saw all these people that looked like me handling their business, and it really motivated me to want to go to college. So, exposure. If we can find a way to expose some of these kids who don't have that in their head yet, that it exists, that you all exist. Because some of them don't see past the corner in their neighborhood.
Royce, can I just say 2 things to that? Thank you for that. The 2 things that I would say is, one, we have to let students at an early age and their parents know that there's money for them to go to school. How many students that will come onto our campus saying this is really nice, or parents, because there are many single parents, will say, well, we can't afford this. Well, they don't know about the scholarships that exist through all of our institutions. They don't know about Pell. They don't know about a lot. So it is attainable. That is one. And the second thing, Royce, is I have an envelope, so if you'd like to make a contribution to the Carl Singleton Scholarship at HAC, I'd be more than happy to do that.
I would just like to say, I go back to getting personally involved. Some years ago, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Harrisburg, and I still don't understand why they picked me, because I don't do the kids, but they on a federal grant, it was called MCOP. It stood for Mentoring Children of Prisoners. And the children that they mentored or searched out for mentors were, their parents were, 1 or 2 parents were incarcerated. Most of the parents were incarcerated, and the children were with like aunts and uncles and grandmothers. They were with relatives. And what they asked me to do was, excuse me, because I'm from the faith-based community, they asked me to go to the different churches, no special denomination, and ask people that didn't have a criminal background, which was weird because I have a criminal background, but they couldn't take on people with a criminal background because they couldn't pass the clearance. So what I did was I went to each church and asked each pastor, about 15 of them in the community, and it worked out fine. It really worked out because there are people that are in churches that should be doing outreach, and I'm an advocate for that. I press hard on churches. You should be doing the outreach. You should be, having some type of program in your church where you're not beating someone over the head with a Bible saying you got to, live right in order to come to church. But in my church, they have a very nice program. It's called Gentlemen and Scholars. A young man from Ohio brought it to my church, and it's mostly, African American. We have a few Hispanic. But the Gentleman and Scholar program teaches them to be gentlemen. It's like a male pageant. It is so nice because they teach them how to take a girl out and sit down. They teach them abstinence, of course, but how to sit down and, with 14 years, just teaching them how to be a gentleman. How you court a, young lady, how you speak to them, how you, conduct yourself. And that is outside of their household. It's not saying they're not getting that at home, but they're young guys coming together and doing something together with each other, and therefore they can be like a support system for each other when they're in school and they're being bullied or being enticed to want to get high or smoke weed. There's just so many things that people as individuals can do, and I'm saying this, but I'm not going to mess with nobody's kid. But I'm saying I support. I give up my money. That's my support. I give them all the money they need, but I'm not a person that want to be right there physically with them, but I'll pay the way. So, I'm a big, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm a financial supporter. Like every year we have a thing at my church called AIM. Well, the kids get to go away for a week. Well, I'll find a kid to a single parent in the church, and I'll pay for that kid's way. And most of the time they don't even know it's coming. And I don't want them to know it's coming from me because I don't want them to ask me for it. but I do get involved indirectly, with helping some single parent or some kid, helping them some kind of way because parents do want their kids to participate in stuff, you know, like, the gentleman in scholar, they take them to a college campus, and they let the guys at the age of, whatever age they're in 10th grade, they let them experience like being on a college campus overnight, so that can influence them. Some don't want to go to the military, which is fine. But the thing of it is it takes a positive person like y'all, who are, you know, doing the right thing. Well, I'm assuming you are because you're in college. Are you all college students?
No.
Oh, who are you? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I don't know. Paul Sigurdsson tells me to do stuff, and I just do it. That's just what he said.
I got that from Brenda Day. Here she goes.
You know, I love working with the community. I love helping in the community any kind of way I can, because it's going to take a lot of us to you know, to not just talk it, but actually be about it. And I'm telling you, I'm about it because I give up my money.
Thank you all. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. I'm guessing people have questions, feedback, comments.
So I have two things that are directed specifically to the mayor. I was previously an English teacher in Philadelphia for about 10 years, and I have some familiarity with some educators here in Harrisburg. Two questions deal with black men, specifically how you can help them. Number one deals with identity. There's a man named Jonathan Kozo. He wrote a book called I Won't Learn From You, and it primarily deals with this issue of young white female teachers coming into primarily urban environments, and there are no black male teachers teaching these young children. So there's a conflict of identity. What are you doing in Harrisburg to help these programs, initiatives, if you have any programs or initiatives that are actually in place, that are actually working to bring more black men into classrooms? That's number one. Number two, the issue deals with curriculum. I know that in order to successfully pass tests like SATs and GREs, you have to have a certain level of vocabulary. The curriculum that is taught here in Pittsburgh and Harrisburg and Philadelphia, they are not teaching children at the high school level Madame Bovary, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Little Women. These books are not being taught in the public school systems in Pennsylvania. We used to, 15 years ago, teach Animal Farm in the 8th grade. We now teach it in the 10th grade. We call that dumbing down. What are you doing? What kind of things can you do to improve curriculum?
Well, those are really important questions, and I will start by prefacing this by saying that the mayor and city government have no direct control over the school district in Harrisburg. So all I can do is lobby and push for reform from the outside and be a collaborative partner. There was a mayoral takeover of our school district that lasted from 2000 to 2010. It was very divisive and did not result in the type of changes that I think we would have liked to have seen. So all I can do is make suggestions, and I will say that one of the things that I did as recently as this morning was speaking with the Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania about the issue of curriculum, and specifically about the need to invest in and focus on that. Right now, we have a system in Pennsylvania where if you are a distressed school district, the focus becomes entirely one of finances. It is not an academic distress, and so the recovery plan fundamentally becomes about how you can pay your bills on time, how you can manage contracts, but not about how you can improve performance in the classroom. That is a huge problem that we're having to overcome. And it's not just that we've dumbed down, and so in my daily life before I became mayor, I operate a bookstore, and it's something that and literacy is a real passion of mine and something that I feel very strongly about. Students today, it's not that they're not even reading those classic texts; they're reading Xerox excerpts and summaries of slight bits of chapters in an attempt to, perform acceptably. They're missing the entire point of reading, and it's a huge problem. I'll tell you what we're doing on the city level. One thing that it's a similar issue is how can we diversify our police force? How can we make sure that we have more African American police officers, just like I believe we've got to have more African American teachers? And one of the means that we're trying to do that is through initiatives recruiting students at a younger age to come back and to see serving as a police officer as not only an honorable career and a positive, good-paying job, but as a means of giving back to Harrisburg. And that, I think, will pay dividends over time, and that will address some of the divisions we have between policing and the community. But it's going to have to be a similar recruitment effort on the part of the school district. They need to be going out and actively recruiting a more diversified teaching body. In Harrisburg, we also have another issue, which is that we fundamentally pay our teachers much less than the surrounding school districts. So unless you can correct that, you're not going to. It is a very tough sell to recruit teachers who are going to come into a district which pays less, is administratively not supportive, doesn't have a stable curriculum in place, and really you've got to address all of that as a whole. And that's why I think Homer's advice of getting political in the broader sense and helping to lobby on the state level is where we can really begin to see meaningful change. And I think a lot of the proposals in Governor Wolf's current budget are exactly the right ones to establish a sort of more equitable financial foundation for how we fund the schools, and we can build upon that over time.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
I have a question. I've been listening. What we touched upon is the tip of the iceberg, but in listening to what each of you have been saying, it appears that it is a culture that we have to deal with. For example, the mayor mentioned about the police department and their perceptions or their experiences with citizens in the community. But then what is their culture, their beliefs and their attitudes? We need to change that. Are you going to retrain most of the officers to deal with that? I'm looking at Mr. Homer, Mr. Lord. Once they get on the job market and they encounter challenges within their job, people making false accusations, people trying to get them to quit, and they do quit, what protection can we give them once they get on the job that they won't encounter those experiences and encounter some of those negativities? And I'm looking at Mr. Norris, the culture and the beliefs of the kids, especially those who listen to rap, that they develop as a result of that. And I don't give a hoot attitude. We're gonna have to go in and change that. My question, and even on hack, once you get students in school and they run across teachers who are not sensitive to their lack thereof, then what's gonna happen? And then I believe her name is Ms. Grant, right? Okay, and Ms. Grant, with the parents, what I'm saying is that it is the culture, and in order to make a dent, we're gonna have to impact culture. What are some of your plans in dealing with the bigger picture and addressing some of our societal problems?
You know that was a question for each of them, right?
Oh, yeah. All about my name.
Well, I'll pass the mic and let others respond. I will say that the first step in addressing the issue of culture and having real systemic cultural change is having an honest, open dialogue about race. And if we start with that conversation as the foundation, we don't do that enough. So I have, one of the things I've been trying to do is we've been, in the aftermath of Ferguson and Harrisburg, we've had a whole series of televised roundtable discussions with various people about race. And I've sat with police officers and I've said, so how has your race impacted your decision-making process in this example or in that example, and similarly with other things. So we're doing that by being comfortable in talking about it. I have lots of thoughts on all sorts of aspects of the cultural change that we need to undertake. But let me just see who else.
I would say quickly from our perspective, this is going to be a long-term activity. But the commitment we have from our Board of Trustees, we have a committee on diversity and inclusion, to our mission statement, our vision statement, et cetera, the strategic plan dealing with the focus on diversity and inclusion is very, very important. But professional development is key. From those new faculty members who come in to teach at one, a community college, and then two, the diverse group of students that we have from the age of 17 to the age of 76. There's a lot of issues there as well. So professional development has been key for them. They've been key for counselors, advisors, for administrators, for the staff that wrap those services around students, especially those that look more like me. It's very important for us to spend time in conversation. It is important for us to go through that, but more importantly to engage with our students. And so we've been having more and more focus groups and panels with students more or less talking to us about what they're experiencing and how we can help make it more welcoming and inviting. And that's been helpful. But again, it's going to be a long conversation, and more than that, action is really what we're looking at. So it's being built into our performance appraisals, and it's being built into our curriculum. So again, it's going to happen, but there will be steps to get there.
Well, I'm back to the unconscious bias, in the sense that you're not going to get progress until we learn or identify our own biases and be able to confront them at this point. Most of the police officers that I have interacted with over the years, and I will say that we had to sue Harrisburg in order to get, this was way back. This is way back.
The mic open.
But we had to file a complaint against Harrisburg in order to get the police officers on board. Now, here's part of the problem. We were able to get, and they were more relaxed in terms of affirmative action in the earlier days. Those officers that came in under the consent order are now retired, and there's nobody coming in, or very few coming in. The same is true with teachers. It's the same thing. We don't have many teachers coming in now. But the truth of the matter is, until we confront our own biases, we had a complaint out of Philadelphia in which an African-American male electrician who had been working on his own as his own business for several years, and also a white electrician. Both of them applied for the same electrician job with one of our companies there in Philadelphia. The white person was given the job, and the African American were not. In our investigation, we asked, well, what made you decide to hire this person over another, when both of them had about the same experience, same kind of credentials? And this guy said, well, the reason I hired him was because this guy, meaning the white guy, he wanted the job so that he could feed his family and support his family. He says the African-American guy, he wanted to get the job just to loaf. So we said, well, what notes do you have about the interview? The notes that he had about the interview was the same thing, which was the African-American said the same thing, that I've been working as an entrepreneur, and I don't have any benefits and so forth, and I want to protect my family, so therefore that's why I want this job. And the point that I'm making is, it was not until we looked at the language that was the same were we able to point out the discrimination, and that same kind of thing happens every day. in almost every area of our society. And that's what we have to work on in order to get people to recognize the kind of decisions they make can be grounded in race, sex, disability, or other areas as well.
I'm going to hit you with a James Baldwin quote. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And so the fact of the matter is, oh, I'm sorry.
One more time. It's not on.
It's not on? Is that on?
Well, maybe it ran out of power.
I think it ran out of juice. So I'm going to say it louder. I'm reading from a James Baldwin quote. And it basically says this: not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And what I mean by that is, you say there's a cultural divide. How do we get to it? We have to face it. We have to realize it's there. We have to realize that our young African-American males are portrayed a certain way, that they're perceived a certain way by the white folks that they encounter. And we need to know that. You succeeded, right? I believe I've succeeded in some way. Mr. Singleton down there succeeded. We all came from different places in different circumstances. Some single parents, some out of the projects, some out of the hood, some out of the penthouse. Maybe you had a family that was well-to-do. But you made it out of those circumstances. Some of us have been given the badge of honorary white in our circles. When you walk in, they now see you a different way because you're not like all of them. And what I say is, I'm like all of them, okay? That's how we bridge the cultural divide. Because when you hear that conversation, when you've been allowed into that honorary white circle, and you don't speak truth to that, then you dishonor that brother back in the projects that you left there. And he might be in jail right now, but he's the same brother that you are. That's how we bridge the cultural divide. We realize that there but for the grace of God go I. And if we reach back and we're able to communicate, I consider myself being able to speak a couple languages. All of them are English. Okay? They all happen to be English, but there are 3 different languages. So we have to be willing to speak that language to the one group, to the other group, and to the other group. Okay, we have to be willing to speak those languages and translate. You know, when the brother has his pants sagging and he's coming out of the projects and he's got a single mom, and you say, he's a whatever. Well, you just denied a whole lot of circumstances that came before he was that whatever. And we can't continue to do that. And we got to speak to the dominant culture. Because of the way they're perceived as a dominant culture, we've got to speak to them about our people and our associations with our people and what we know about them that they don't know about. A brother from the projects can tell you about a brother from the projects. Okay? He can tell you what it was like. He can tell you how he got out of there. And if he can communicate to another brother that's in the same circumstances that he was in, that, look, I'm no different than you. So bridging the cultural divide means we have to be willing to go back to some places that we weren't comfortable in. You understand? That's my point. A lot of us don't want to go back to those places because they had some bad memories, But you have to be willing to go back. And if you're not willing to go back, you're not going to be able to bridge any cultural divide because they're going to see you as them. And you could, have a black face, but they could see you as them because you have not made that connection that where you are, I was.
Last
Hi, I'm Sharon Stringer. I'm the president of Pennsylvania Black Conference. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. My question is this. Dwayne asked about the culture, and that would take a while to change. But I'm just thinking about the very specific. I'm going to ask you from HAC because you're there and on the spot, but maybe somebody else has some information that they can share with me later. Does anybody know of any specific programs that are directed to people who come out of prison to get them back into any of our institutions? Specifically, since that's what we were talking about.
That's my program. CRAM it has a faith-based name because I started off as a prison minister. Let me share this with you. I'm an ex-offender. I've been in Muncie State Prison 4 times. I have 15 years of drug addiction. And in 1986, when I went to Muncie for the last time, I did 7 years and 9 months. I came home, I walked off 8.5 years parole. It was my spiritual mentor, my spiritual mother, who I met in Dauphin County Prison in 1986, that, you know, told me, and she still tells me today, that God told her to put her hands on me. Now, she had ministered to thousands of people, and she wouldn't turn me loose. She wrote me, she made sure that, you know, I had that support system, because I come from a family of 11, and my mom wasn't a drug addict. My mom had 11 kids. She had time to drink or use drugs. But the thing of it is I got out to the street and I made some bad choices, and I fell in love with the street life. That's why I do what I do, because I've been there and done that. I didn't go into this thing willingly. I went in kicking and screaming because I told God, I don't want to deal with convicts. I don't want to deal with ex-offenders. I don't want to deal with drug addicts because they're a hard population, especially the adults. But it's my calling. I do what I do because I am called to do it. And it's my life now. It's my passion. I've been running CRAM. I took CRAM from a prison ministry. I started in 1995, and I took it from a prison ministry to an aftercare program, because going inside the prison, meet people over here with the Bible, tell them they're going to hell if they don't live right. It didn't, I mean, it works for a minute, but they have jailhouse religion. So what happens when they get out? So my spiritual mentor at 85 years old told me that she was too old to run behind him, and she wanted me to start aftercare. Well, after kicking and screaming with her and her telling me that I act like I forgot where I came from, that's what hit me. I said, okay, I don't believe God want me to do this, Mother. I think you want me to do it, because I loved her so much, and she was old. I said, I'm gonna do this because I want to show her how much I appreciate her sticking by me. It helped me change my life. Well, I knew it was my calling because it became my life. We serve, and I'm not bragging, but I believe CRAM, because now I'm in 6 counties. Long story short, I know what I do is works, and I know what I do has been good, because Governor Leader, which I think everybody in here is old enough to probably remember Governor Leader, he died in 2012 and left a $500,000 trust fund for my program, for me to operate CRAM in 6 counties.
I was thinking on the institution side.
You mean
know,
the
this
Department
way,
of Corrections?
Because, yeah, in terms of at the university level, are we doing something at the university level to help you? Is what I was talking about.
You want to help me to help people?
That's what
Give
I'm
me
talking
some
about.
money. It takes a lot of money to help. I'm telling you, I get a lot of grants. I'm gonna give you something. I'm gonna share this with you. Today, I was at the post office, almost like doing a whole holy dance, because I'm working with my nephew, who is a successful ex-offender. He is now the developer for the Harrisburg Housing Authority. That's how far he has came. He went from a subcontractor doing contractor work to a developer. So now he has this contract with the city of Harrisburg. I mean, with the Harrisburg Housing Authority. There are things that we can't just do because we don't have the money to do them. So I wrote a grant, knowing that he couldn't get it. So what I did, I said, okay, I'm gonna partner with you. I pushed him off my board of directors. I said, we gotta be business partners and not aunt and nephew. So I wrote a grant and just got the check today for $13,500, asking this foundation. I said, we got 25 guys that's ready to learn renovation constructions. They don't have no tools. How you gonna do it? So they gave me a check today for $13,500 so that each guy had their own little tool belt. Wow. That's the kind of stuff that helps. That's the kind of stuff that helps people, like, especially the black ex-offender men. Listen, I've had them sit in my office and literally cry because they can't even get a job at McDonald's because people will keep them where they are. And I have to use myself and say, listen, mine was divine intervention. I'm a 25-year state. I just retired from the state as a paralegal. It's not because society looked at me and said, oh, let's help her. That was from upstairs. I'm sorry, that's the only way I can look at it. But people need to help people. It takes money. The city gives me money, CDBG grant, you know, because I try to help prevent crime. You know, everything I do, I'm trying to help to prevent crime. If I'm helping to prevent crime, I'm helping them to refrain from getting high or committing crime. I'm helping the families to keep their parent at home. I'm helping the city to have less crime. I'm helping reduce recidivism, all that old political stuff that I'm not about. But I'm helping to do all that stuff. But my main goal is to help that individual to say to that man, you can get a job. But you know what we have to do? We have to teach them a skill. You know, renovation and construction, you can make big money in that.
Where would they go for that?
We do need to
We
close.
have, well, no, I'm sorry, Ski. I'm sorry, but we have work-based training. That grant I got today is for TLC's work-based training, which we are partnering with you, because it's about partnership and collaboration. But they can't afford all the time to go to HACC. So I get grant money, and Target gets grant money, and now I have this money to buy everybody all the tools they need. In order to get tools to go to a program at HACC, they have to come up with the money. I don't want people getting student loans and sitting there trying to pay a student loan back for the next 20 years. So that's what we do with the program I have. We get grant money, and we will accept every dime anybody want to give us. In fact, I'm doing a capital campaign. I'm going to send this to you so you can get it to all of them, because we're trying to get a specific building so we can be under one roof and have a one-stop service center in Harrisburg. I'm uptown girl. In Harrisburg, uptown, so that could be the hub. That's the hub. Everybody that comes to Harrisburg, no, you come to the hub. I actually named it that, Harrisburg Uptown girl. The hub, and you get what you need. If you're an ex-offender, if you're a hard-to-place individual, if you're a veteran, those are the people that are suffering in our community. And guess who most of them are? African American males.
So, Eduardo, I'm going to hold that. I'm going to hold it and let you ask a question after this, because I do need to stick to time. Okay. So, as we end there, I do want to make sure that people are clear. There's an immediate way to help, and part of what we've done is create the Community Service Project, which is to donate, to have you all, as members, donate so that we can contribute as an organization GED workbooks to Juanita's organization. So I would say I expect to see everybody pulling out $20 out of their pocket before you leave this conference. It's a very immediate way to do exactly what you're saying, right? You need money?
Yes.
We have a little money. There's no reason that we shouldn't continue. I see Earl's eyes rolling back in his head. We can do this, people. I know that we can all do this. So that is what I want to say, which contributes to the cause. Let me just say thank you to the panel. I think you've provided a really think about. I was taking notes. I think other people were taking notes. I think there's a lot that folks can go back to their institutions with, lots of ideas. I see heads nodding, that we can do, that really is something that's doable, that we could partner with many of the organizations, some of the communities that we're all in. I want to thank Carl Singleton, who helped me pull the panelists together. Thank my significant other, Storm Kamara, who really worked with me behind the scenes to A, come up with the Community Service Project idea, and then come up with what we were going to talk about for this panel. Thank you. So that is it. I want to leave a few minutes. I know people want to talk to you all as you leave, but I want to get you out of here on time. Thank you so much. We couldn't say, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.